I want to start with a number, 1 in 5. That is the proportion of the general population that researchers estimate scores significantly above average on at least one of the 3 personality traits I am going to show you today. 1 in 5 people. Think about the 5 people closest to you right now. Your family, your workplace, your relationships. The people who have had the most impact on your life, positive or negative. Statistically, one of them fits this profile. And if you are watching this video, if the title stopped you, if something in those words felt personally relevant, there is a good chance you already know which one it is. You have felt it. The confusion after a conversation that seemed normal but left you feeling small. The specific exhaustion of being around someone who always somehow makes everything about themselves. The nagging sense that you are being played, but you cannot prove it, and you cannot explain it. And every time you try to articulate it, you sound paranoid. You are not paranoid. What you have been sensing, the thing your nervous system has been trying to tell you, has a name. It has a structure. It has been studied by psychologists for decades. And today, I am going to show you exactly what it is, how it works, and, most importantly, how to protect yourself from it. The Dark Triad, 3 personality traits, 1 profile, and the psychology that explains why some people leave destruction everywhere they go and genuinely do not care. Before I show you each trait in detail, I want to give you the map. The Dark Triad is not a clinical diagnosis. It is not something a doctor will write in your notes. It is a psychological framework, a way of describing a constellation of personality traits that, when they cluster together in the same person, create someone who is consistently capable of causing harm to the people around them without genuine remorse. The 3 traits are narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy. They are related, they overlap, they reinforce each other, and a person high in one is statistically more likely to score high in the others. But each one has its own distinct psychology, its own specific pattern of behavior, and its own specific way of damaging the people it targets. What they share, at the core, is 3 characteristics that researchers call the dark core of personality. First, callousness, a reduced capacity for empathy and genuine care for others. Second, manipulation, a willingness to use people as instruments for personal goals. Third, entitlement, a belief that their needs, desires, and rules are more important than anyone else's. Now here is what makes this so difficult to navigate in real life. Dark Triad individuals are almost never obviously dark. They do not walk into your life wearing a warning sign. They are frequently charming, often intelligent, sometimes extraordinarily successful. They can be warm when they need to be, attentive when it serves them, and absolutely magnetic in the early stages of a relationship. The darkness is not on the surface, it is in the structure underneath. Let me show you each one. Of the 3 traits, narcissism is the one most people think they understand. They think of the person who posts too many selfies, the colleague who talks about themselves constantly, the partner who always needs to win an argument. And while those behaviors can be signs of narcissistic traits, they miss something fundamental about what narcissism actually is. At the psychological level, in the research, in the clinical reality of the people who have lived inside a relationship with a genuine narcissist. Narcissism is not, at its core, about self-love. It is about a wound. Otto Kernberg, one of the most influential psychoanalytic researchers of the 20th century, described narcissistic personality structure as a grandiose self built on a foundation of profound inner emptiness. The grandiosity, the superiority, the entitlement, the constant need for admiration is not strength. It is armor. It is a construction built to protect a self that at its deepest level believes it is fundamentally defective, worthless, or unlovable. This is the paradox that makes narcissists so difficult to deal with and so easy to be drawn back to. The thing that looks like confidence is actually terror of being exposed. And this plays out in relationships in a very specific cycle. It begins with love bombing, intense attention, extraordinary flattery, the feeling that you have finally found someone who truly sees you. It feels like the most real connection you have ever experienced because they are studying you carefully, finding exactly what you need to hear and delivering it with precision. Then comes devaluation. Gradually, subtly, the criticism begins. You are never quite enough. The standards shift constantly. The person who made you feel extraordinary begins making you feel like you can never get it right. Then the discard. When you stop providing what they need, admiration, attention, the specific emotional supply that feeds the grandiose self, the relationship ends, often suddenly, often cruelly, and then hoovering. They return. When their supply elsewhere runs low, they come back, reigniting just enough hope to pull you back in. Here is what the research shows about narcissism that most people do not know. Narcissists are not actually high in self-esteem. Studies measuring implicit self-esteem, the unconscious automatic sense of self-worth below the surface, consistently find that narcissists score low. The explicit self-esteem, the stated performed loud version, is high, but beneath the performance, the research suggests, is something much more fragile. This has a specific implication for anyone in a relationship with a narcissist. You cannot fix it. You cannot love them into security. You cannot be consistent enough, patient enough, or good enough to fill the emptiness at the core, because that emptiness was created before you arrived, and it exists at a depth that no relationship can reach. What you can do is understand the specific patterns so that you can see them clearly when they happen to you. The second trait of the Dark Triad takes its name from a 16th century Florentine diplomat named Niccolo Machiavelli. In 1513, Machiavelli wrote a treatise called The Prince, a manual for rulers on how to acquire and maintain power. His central argument was that a successful ruler must be willing to deceive, manipulate, and act without moral constraint when the situation demands it. The ends justify the means. 500 years later, psychologists took his name and attached it to a personality trait, and the trait they described is chillingly accurate to the original text. Machiavellians are strategic, calculated, patient. They do not act on impulse. They plan. They assess people's weaknesses, motivations, and vulnerabilities with the specific, dispassionate clarity of someone who sees other human beings primarily as resources to be used or obstacles to be neutralized. What makes Machiavellianism distinctive from narcissism and psychopathy is its specific quality of coldness. Narcissists need your admiration. They are emotionally dependent on your reaction to them. Psychopaths may have genuine biological deficits in their emotional processing, but Machiavellians simply do not care about your well-being, not because they cannot, but because they have decided it is irrelevant to their goals. Here is the specific thing about Machiavellians that makes them uniquely dangerous in professional and romantic contexts. They are excellent at reading people, not because they are empathetic, they are not, but because understanding your psychology is useful to them. They study you. They identify what you value, what you fear, what you need, and what you are secretly ashamed of, and they use all of it. In a workplace, the Machiavellian colleague is often the one who rises fastest, while others cannot quite explain why. They take credit strategically. They form alliances that serve their advancement and dissolve them when they no longer do. They never appear to be the villain. They are too careful for that. Instead, someone else always ends up looking like the problem. In a romantic relationship, the experience of a Machiavellian partner is often described as, "I always felt like I was being managed rather than loved, like there was a strategy underneath every conversation, like my emotions were being used against me," because they were. Early research on Machiavellianism found that high Mach individuals consistently outperformed others in situations involving face-to-face manipulation, but only when they could control the interaction. In structured, rule-bound situations, the advantage disappeared. Machiavellians thrive in ambiguity. They thrive in environments where the rules are loose and the social landscape is complex, which is why they are so often found and so often succeed in exactly the environments where you spend most of your life. The third trait is the one that the word toxic most often invokes, and the one that is most misunderstood. When people hear the word psychopath, they imagine a movie villain, a serial killer, someone in a cell somewhere. That is not what the research describes. Robert Hare, the clinical psychologist who spent his career developing the most widely used assessment tool for psychopathy in the world, estimates that approximately 1% of the general population meets the clinical threshold for psychopathy. But subclinical psychopathic traits, a partial profile without the full disorder, are far more common, and they are present at significant levels in the people sharing your offices, your homes, and your lives. What distinguishes psychopathy from the other two Dark Triad traits is something neurobiological. Psychopathy is not just a choice to not care about other people. It appears to involve a genuine structural difference in how the brain processes emotion, fear, and social information. Brain imaging studies of individuals with high psychopathy scores show reduced activity in the amygdala, the brain's emotion processing center, when viewing images of other people in pain or distress. The empathic response that activates automatically in most people simply does not fire with the same intensity. This is not performed callousness. It appears to be a genuine neurological difference. There are two subtypes of psychopathy that are important to understand. Primary psychopathy involves low fear, low anxiety, and low emotional reactivity. These individuals are calm under pressure, charming, confident, bold. And this is precisely what makes them so difficult to detect. They are not nervous, not guilty-seeming, not reactive in the ways we expect dangerous people to be. Secondary psychopathy is more impulsive, more reactive, often more visibly volatile, more recognizable, but often less strategically dangerous than the primary subtype. The primary psychopath is the one who causes the most confusion in the people they damage, because they are not the screaming abuser. They are not the obviously dangerous person. They are often the most charming person in the room. They are calm in crisis, decisive, socially fluent, and completely unbothered by the emotional consequences of their actions on others. When you leave an interaction feeling devastated and they are entirely fine, that asymmetry is not a personality mismatch. It is data about their neurological relationship to your pain. They are not suffering because you are suffering. They may intellectually understand that you are distressed, but the automatic empathic resonance, the thing that makes most human beings respond to others' pain with their own discomfort, does not fire in them the way it fires in you. And that changes everything about what you can realistically expect from them. One of the most painful questions people ask after leaving a relationship with a Dark Triad individual is this: why me? And often because they are kind people, because they have been conditioned into self-blame by the relationship itself. They ask it as an indictment. What is wrong with me that I attracted this person? What is wrong with me that I stayed? I want to reframe that question completely, because the research on why Dark Triad individuals target specific people does not describe weaknesses. It describes strengths, specific, genuine human qualities that these individuals identify and exploit. They target people with high empathy, because people who feel deeply are easier to manipulate through emotional appeals. They target people with high conscientiousness, because people who take responsibility make excellent targets because they will accept blame. They target people with high agreeableness, because people who avoid conflict will tolerate more before objecting. They target people with high trust, because people who see the good in others take longer to recognize predatory behavior. They target people who are emotionally open, because sharing your vulnerabilities gives them a map of your pressure points. If you are the person who was targeted, you are targeted because you are caring, responsible, trusting, and emotionally available. Those are not flaws. They are the qualities that make you capable of genuine love and genuine connection. The same qualities that make you valuable to people who deserve you, and vulnerable to people who don't. Sandra Brown, at the Institute for Relational Harm Reduction, studied more than 75,000 survivors of relationships with psychopathic partners, and what she found was consistent across all of them. These survivors showed extraordinarily high conscientiousness, high agreeableness, and what she calls super traits, elevated versions of the qualities that normally predict healthy, successful relationships. You were not too weak, you were too good for someone who was never going to match you. Now, I want to give you something practical. 7 strategies that the research and clinical literature consistently identify as protective, not from theoretical threat, but from the specific ways Dark Triad individuals operate. Strategy 1. Trust behavior, not words. Dark Triad individuals are often extraordinarily verbally skilled. They will say the right things. They will apologize beautifully. They will explain convincingly. The research on identifying manipulative personality styles consistently returns to one principle. Behavior over time is the only reliable signal. Not what they say in the good moments, not their promises, not their explanations. What they repeatedly do, especially in low-stakes situations where the performance is off and the behavior is automatic. Strategy 2. Protect your information. Machiavellians specifically use personal information as leverage. The vulnerabilities you share, your fears, your traumas, your insecurities, become tools in the hands of someone who intends to use them. This does not mean closing yourself off from all intimacy. It means moving slowly, sharing proportionally, noticing whether your openness is being matched or extracted. Strategy 3. Observe how they treat others. Dark Triad individuals are often skilled at managing their primary targets while revealing themselves in their treatment of secondary people. The waiter, the assistant, the ex-partner, the colleague who is no longer useful to them. How someone treats people from whom they want nothing is the most reliable character signal available. Watch it carefully. Strategy 4. Name the pattern, not the person. Trying to diagnose someone, telling them you think they are a narcissist, a psychopath, or a Machiavellian, is almost never useful and is often counterproductive. What is useful is naming the specific behavior and its specific impact on you. Not you are manipulative, but when you do this, the impact on me is this, and I am not willing to continue accepting that. This is a boundary that operates regardless of their diagnosis. Strategy 5. Build your reality testing network. Gaslighting, the systematic undermining of your perception of reality, is one of the most consistent features of Dark Triad relationships. It works because it is gradual, because it is often delivered by someone you trust, and because it leaves you isolated from alternative perspectives. The antidote is deliberate connection to people outside the relationship. People who knew you before. People who can reflect your reality back to you when your own perception has been systematically undermined. Strategy 6. The gray rock method. For situations where you cannot simply leave, co-parenting, a workplace, a family relationship, the gray rock method is one of the most practically effective protective strategies identified by survivor communities and supported by clinical literature. The principle is simple. You become as uninteresting as a gray rock. You provide no emotional reaction, no engaging personal information, no dramatic response. Dark Triad individuals are drawn to emotional reactivity. Removing that supply removes most of their motivation to engage. Strategy 7. Radical acceptance of what they cannot give. Perhaps the most psychologically difficult strategy and the most important. Dark Triad individuals cannot, in most cases, give you what you need from them. Not the genuine remorse, not the lasting change, not the reciprocal care. This is not a failure of your ability to love them well enough. It is a function of their psychology. Accepting this, truly accepting it, at the level where you stop investing emotional resources in the hope that they will eventually become capable of what you need, is both the hardest step and the most protective one. Because the alternative, staying in the cycle of hope and disappointment and hope again, is not just painful. The research shows it has measurable long-term effects on your nervous system, your sense of self, and your capacity for trust in future relationships. I want to close with something important. Learning about the Dark Triad is not about becoming suspicious of everyone. It is not about diagnosing the people in your life or approaching relationships with armor instead of openness. It is about something much more specific. It is about understanding that when you feel confused after an interaction that should have been simple, when you feel diminished by someone who claims to love you, when you feel responsible for the pain caused by someone else's choices, that confusion, that diminishment, that misplaced responsibility has a source, it has a structure, it has a name, and it was never, at any point, a reflection of your worth. The 1 in 5 statistic I gave you at the beginning of this video is not there to make you afraid. It is there to tell you that what you experienced, whatever it was not a one-off, was not your fault, was not the result of your being too sensitive, too demanding, too broken to make a relationship work. You encountered a pattern that millions of people have encountered, and now you know what the pattern is. And knowledge, real knowledge, the kind that changes how you see, is the beginning of everything. If this video helped you see something clearly that was confused before, please subscribe and hit the bell. Every week on Soul Fuel, I bring you psychology and neuroscience like this, real, research-backed, and designed to change how you understand yourself and the world around you. And I want to hear from you. Has someone in your life shown you these patterns? What was the specific moment when something shifted, when you saw the behavior clearly for the first time? Tell me in the comments, because your words might be exactly what someone else needs to finally name what they have been living through.